You're ready.
Call the meeting to order. We have six of us are here, and Nancy is on the phone. I would propose a motion to allow Nancy to vote.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Nancy, you're a voter.
You're on the hook.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the minutes of the March 9th meeting. I have a couple of, really they're small changes that I had transmitted to Diane, but I think I gave her so many she didn't pick these two up. They're in item number 9, and they're the second and third sentences, and they're just clarifications. So, I can just give those to Diane if people are satisfied. You know, they don't change the context at all. They just clarify on the second sentence. What I did is I said, please reword it to say, he also, referring to Bob, he also explained that one lane of traffic on Pelican Boulevard will be blocked while work is proceeding.
Sure.
The sentence doesn't mention Pelican Boulevard. And the third sentence is a little bit off, and I asked that be rewritten to say, Phil Meesey stated that this will impact the data collection phase of the traffic study, which is scheduled to run from Tuesday, March 14th to Wednesday, March 22nd. So just restatement of those two sentences, just to clarify. As I said, no change in context. Does anybody else have any other changes? How are you, sir?
Well, how's everyone?
Wow, welcome back.
Yes. Thanks. Very nice. Have an agenda, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You can take your favorite chair.
Yeah.
No, I don't fit in the chair anymore.
Okay.
Is this the guy who's taking the chair?
Huh?
Chris is coming in, he's outside.
When he was here, then he went back. He went back. Okay. Any other changes, additions, corrections to the minutes of March 19th? If not, I'll entertain a motion that they be approved.
So moved. Second.
As revised.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Okay. Financials update, Nancy?
Okay, financial update, there isn't anything out of the ordinary on the P&L through the end of February. Everything is either within the 100% of where it should be right now, or a couple percentage points off. So everything looks good there. But I just passed out, I can't remember who asked, wanted to see what our actual balance sheet looks like at the last meeting. For the beginning of the year and now, so the one I just gave everybody dated September 30th would be effectively our balance sheet as of October 1, the start of our fiscal year. And if you look at the second column, that is the total preserve portion of the balance sheet. And the next 3 pages is the statement of revenues and expenditures that Severn Trent completes, which encompasses everything, not just our portion. And if you look at the last page of that, you'll see about in the middle of the page, it says HOA agreement. And that is the part of the budget that we deal with. And you can see we're well within through February, the year-to-date budget would be 1.119 million, and we'll only
I'm sorry,
Yeah, where are you,
your
Nancy?
page,
You lost
the
me.
very last page.
Are you going over to your numbers now?
No, I'm looking at what I just gave you.
Yeah, but it says period ending September 30th. Is that the one you want us to do?
Sure, this
Yes.
one.
That one.
What I just
September
gave you
30th.
is September 30th.
Yeah, okay.
And if you go to the last page of it.
Last page.
In the middle of the page, there's a line that says HOA agreement.
Yes, got it, yeah.
That is the portion of the budget that we are responsible for.
Right.
So, right now, you can see, the year-to-date budget is 1.119 million, and we're only at 971,000, so we're well within our budget this year right now.
Oh, so even though it says for the period ending September 30th, it's actually through, what, the end of February?
There are 2 of them.
There's
Oh,
February and.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
okay.
you looked at the wrong one.
I mean,
Before we switch to February,
Yeah.
Just
Again,
yes, did I
just
miss
these couple of lines that you've got here. The 971, are we saying that the difference between 971 and the 1,119, I guess that's the 148,905?
That was where we ended last year.
Okay, does that mean that money's actually left over, or these
Yes.
bills haven't showed up yet?
Oh, okay.
That accounts for that money?
Normally, that would mean that that was money left over, but, I don't know if you remember, probably in January, when I said that I had received some bills from, Jason that had not been billed to us
Okay.
properly last year. So some of that should have come out of that.
Okay, so my question is, and I think you did this because of me,
Maybe.
okay, how much money is left over from last year's budget?
From last year's loan, being that I don't know how Severn Trent handled all those invoices, I can't say exactly how much is left over, but we have, I'm trying to see if there's a total.
So if I look at the period ended September 30th, 2016,
Right.
it would appear that there's $512,000. That's, well, oh, no, I'm sorry, 140.
Well, that's what we were just talking about, but
Right.
Nancy's saying there were some bills
Yes,
that she
right.
had not received yet.
Right, okay.
That
That,
would
not,
be
you know, and you don't know how
against
the
that.
whether the 90,000 will be tagged against that, or?
I don't know how they would have handled it, if they would have taken it out of prior period funds, because we also had, in addition to that, there's been prior period funds every year, so we had some accumulation.
Right.
That wouldn't be included in that right there, so there's plenty of cash there to handle it. Even though 90,000 is free.
And what was the 90,000 represent?
They were, probably about 15 or 20 invoices that Castle Group had inadvertently not submitted to us, they had paid them.
Most of the landscaping types of things.
They were a variety of things, landscaping, one was Securitas, I think there was just a whole
Okay,
bunch
okay.
of different things. And they started in January, went all the way to the end of last calendar year. And I think it was just around 90,000.
That's correct. Okay, so you think there's about $48,000 that's
Yes.
actually
Yes.
really truly left over?
And like I said.
50,000, just to
Yeah,
round it off, 50,000.
yeah.
I can't tell you how Severn Trent would have counted for it. There's just no way to know.
Is there something, is that something that Stephen could?
It probably is, but they don't have the final audited statements yet, and I think once they have the audited financial statements, then we should know for sure. But we know we have, plenty of funds to.
So when we look at this year's budget, now is that in this, the February numbers?
Okay, the February one,
Does that show this year's numbers? as
that's
well?
our expenses year-to-date this year.
Okay, so if I look at the last page again, right?
Yep. The HOA agreement line.
The HOA agreement line, I see $1,185,000. That's our actual budget?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay? We have, in addition to that, around $50,000, in addition to that, we think.
Just from last year,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there was
that's what I'm
prior.
talking
Well, the 400, yeah, we got 433,000.
Actual.
Yeah, we got 60,000 this year, and then we have another 50,000 from last year.
Well, but in the middle of the year, it's hard to make a
Yes, I agree.
conclusion,
Yeah.
because you're ongoing.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at year-end stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
As of the end of last fiscal year,
Yeah.
we had about $50,000. So when you look at this year's budget,
Yeah.
which is the 1.185 million,
Yeah.
in addition to that, we have about $50,000.
Right.
In addition to that.
Right.
Okay? So as we go through the year, you never know what other things might
Right.
come up.
Right.
But keep in mind that in the prior years, there had also been
Some of that kind of money.
that kind of money, so
Maybe even more than that.
even more than that, yes.
And we don't know exactly what happened to that money, or is that money?
It's sitting there, if you look at the front page, our assets, the balance
This
sheet.
Yeah, look,
this
I
is
mean,
the February-
we're really rich.
We're talking about the February one now?
Look at the front balance sheet, how much money we have.
We're a hell of a lot richer than the general fund.
And where should I be looking for that
Second
number?
column,
Second column,
Total assets.
total assets. If you look in that column, you see investments. we
5
have-
million? Does that include reserves?
That that
Who's
includes,
the reserve?
if you look at it, there's, CDs for 12 months, 18 months, 6 months, and 9 months, plus the ICS, which is just another place they deposit funds.
CDs.
And a money market.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We have a lot of cash sitting there.
Right.
Yeah. Now, some of that cash is in the reserve account.
Is that the Bob's Pond's money that we've been left over from prior
Some
year?
of it's there too.
We should have 688,000 in
Yeah.
bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Entering this year.
Yeah, yeah, so.
Okay, so
all-
that's wrapped in these numbers?
That's all wrapped in those
Okay.
numbers.
Well, and if you look towards the bottom of the front page, you'll see, just about 4 or 5 lines up from the bottom, fixed asset reserves. So of all that cash sitting there, 960,000 is committed to.
Specifically to reserves.
Committed to
So
reserves.
you got nothing
But
in
that
ponds or
still
whatever.
leaves a lot of
Right.
Okay.
cash.
Yeah, he's a
So
lot.
we're financially, we are.
Yeah.
Well, but my point is, you know, at some point in time, we're
Yeah.
gonna come up with a budget that's gonna be talking about an increase.
Well, that's right.
At some point in time, and we've been fortunate the last year or so.
That's right.
We've been able to
Well,
basically hold the
and-
line.
And this year, the likelihood is unless we go bonkers someplace else, we still haven't picked up
Cypress Grove.
Cypress Grove, and the traffic study that we had planned on is being paid out of another fund. We're not paying
Okay,
for that.
okay.
And now
So-
it's 50,000.
And we put $50,000 in for a traffic
So
study.
I'm gonna make a, I shouldn't even do this. We should be cutting the budget at the end of this year.
Well, let's see where we are, you know, we.
Sounds like.
It sounds like, we decided not to cut the budget last year.
Correct.
Because
We-
we put more in reserve.
Right, which is
Right.
fine, I don't
Well-
mind doing that, you know, especially without having the reserve study yet.
Yes,
That
right.
might say, by the way, you're really behind and you need to
Exactly.
catch up.
Right.
I don't mind that, but I'm not trying to say to the rest of you guys that there is some money there.
Oh, yeah.
The actual dollar amount is still confusing to me, what that is exactly,
Yeah.
okay? But, you know, when it comes to budget time, we again revisit these numbers, which is, by the way, like now.
I was gonna say, well, you know, well,
Right.
it's very,
Right away.
your comments are very apropos,
Yeah.
because I think
This is the time of the year.
This is
Yeah.
when I start looking
Jason
at
and
the
Absolutely.
Nancy, we gotta start working on the budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
Um,
Last year I know I started at when I had 6 months worth of data,
Right.
which is right now.
Now, do we know, you know, we put money into this year's budget for Cypress Grove.
Yes.
Was that only Cypress Grove Tract L?
Yes.
Well,
Well,
For ponds, I understand, for ponds.
Ponds.
But for landscaping, for example, was that only Tract L? Well, we know.
I draw your attention to this.
Yeah.
I never personally felt comfortable in knowing what track L was.
Now you know.
Last week's CDD meeting,
Yes.
Dave Caldwell provided this little map.
Yeah.
Now, there's actually 6 parts to track out.
7.
7 parts to track out.
Yeah.
So when we talk track out, we need to be very careful about
Yes,
what
I
it is
agree.
that we're talking about.
Okay.
Because it's a lot more than just Cypress Grove.
Yeah, let me rephrase it. Track L is one of 7 parts.
Well, I
The
draw your
only thing-
attention to the key.
Well-
The key identifies 7 track L sections.
Tract L phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5.
Six.
Well, whatever this, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sections.
5 components
is
track
tracked out.
No, isn't there 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 6 because Solaro up above.
Right, that's also considered part of track out, according to the key. So there's 6 pieces.
But we,
Okay.
as a group, have never considered anything, either in ponds or anything else, beyond track L. Because up until 2 weeks ago, that's all that had been
Well,
presented.
and that goes back to what Phil was saying, when we created the budget, we put money in there for landscaping and other things. Were we putting money in for all of what's considered track
No,
L, or just
only-
that portion?
Only to track L,
For such-
because we put the same money in there, we planned it for track L. So
Let me finish,
Okay.
because we're saying 2 different things, okay?
All right.
Did we put money in for all of track L as defined on this sheet?
Yes,
Or are we putting money only for Cypress Grove,
I think,
itself, the road?
only track L.
So it's all of these sections.
I think it's track L one.
I think it's
Only
phase
of
1.
Track
Phase
L.
one.
I think it's only
See,
phase
I'm
1.
Well,
hearing
when I'm
two
saying,
different things.
but you're not, you just gotta listen a little better. track L.
Bob.
Wait a minute, listen, Ron, really, track L, the part is how they color the map. That's immaterial, whether they make it red, green, blue, black, whatever, it's the same neighborhoods. There's certain neighborhoods that are track L. Solaro, Azura, part of Matarita, part of Carina, and part of Cypress Grove. That's track L.
I'm agreeing with you, I wanna make sure that
That's
that's what
what
Phil
money-
is saying.
Now, but I believe, looking at this map, that when we have been talking conveyance from, WCI to ourselves, maybe not in tons, but I believe it is what's marked on here as phase one, which is the dark blue, which is part of,
So you think we only went up that far and no further?
no,
In
I think
terms
we
of
went all the way
landscaping.
in.
I'm talking landscape.
Well, I don't, now I must admit, I'm confused.
We went further when we did landscape. When we walked
Maybe,
the street.
maybe Jason can
Jason,
help.
do you know?
Because through you, we got a landscape estimate for
Yeah,
our
but what-
budget. So the question is, what did that estimate cover?
Jason, do you wanna come up?
Come on up, you may not know the answer right this moment, but if you
Right.
don't, we can go and find out.
Yeah, I do not know off the top of my head the answer to that. But I should be able to, you know, but he did break the proposals down
Okay.
by the areas.
Oh, he did?
Uh-huh,
Okay.
that he was speaking to, so that should help
Okay.
clarify
But
that.
you gotta make sure that he looks at the entirety of this map.
I'll go back over this now that we have
You have a
this.
copy of this?
I do.
Okay, good. So you know what is, all these track L things on here, from a landscaping perspective, we probably only want to look at Cypress Grove anyway. Because landscaping should not include the side roads for us.
That's true.
That's
And
for
that's
the
all that
individual
was done.
association.
When we
I think
walked the
you're right.
landscape,
Except for the
We-
cul-de-sacs, right?
we went as far as Julia
Mhm.
and no further. And I'm talking about the Tetra Tech, we all walked around, what's dead, what's not dead, and everything. So that was all specific to track L. What we were told was track L at that time. And it corresponded with what they presented to
Yeah,
us.
and that makes sense.
Yeah.
From a conveyance perspective.
Yes.
But Nancy's right, we do have to cover the cul-de-sacs.
And
Right,
monuments.
so and that's, I wanna
Monuments.
make sure that that's what we put in our budget,
The
that covers
monuments
the
and-
cul-de-sacs, the monuments, the road itself, Cypress Grove Road itself, but not the side roads, because that would be the individual HOAs.
Yeah. Well, I must admit, and I guess I was confused, because I have been referring to in all our things, conveyance, things that I've been communicating with Tony about, I've been referring to Cypress Grove Tract L, but Tract L is obviously larger than what I was considering when we talked about
Yeah.
that.
That's the way it was presented to us. Here is our conveyance of track L, which includes Solaro Resort. So that's probably where the confusion comes.
Yeah.
But in my mind, anyway, the track L boundary was as far as Cypress Grove went of what we were under consideration, and that was just short of Julia. Now, I must admit, when we walked, we did not do the cul-de-sacs. We stayed on the main body,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
didn't think it was an oversight.
So-
We never walked down, well, Solaro wasn't even finished at that point, there was still little homes down there, but Azura certainly.
Yeah.
And just, like, Mr.
Yeah.
Tuesday Board, you notice on this chart, Cypress Grove changes color.
Color, that's right, that's
Okay.
why I said I was confused.
So now you've
Because it's
got-
both phase one
And-
of tract L and
Carena,
tract.
phase two,
Phase two.
I'm reading.
That is
Yeah.
correct. Karina's got
Includes part of
two,
Cypress Grove.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
first part, of what we call Carina one is part of track L, Carina two was not, that's a separate and independent. And that's where Julia comes in. So we went up to, but I don't think we included Julia in our walk. But it clearly must be included when we look at, Carina two.
Yeah. So Jason, they need to look at this entire.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back over this, now that I have this
Okay.
this map with Ameriscape and see what areas was included or what needs to be included.
Right, and so obviously when you and Nancy are starting to put budgets together, that'll include the whole thing.
Well, now we have a guide, so.
Right, no, this is really helpful.
Exactly which sections
Yeah.
are included or not included.
That is very helpful.
Because it gets complicated, because Cypress Grove covers Carina phase two.
Right.
So we may be putting some money in there, but it's only for Cypress Grove itself and some of the cul-de-sacs,
Right.
et cetera. Not for
But
all of Carina.
But for Bob's
Bob's a little different.
It's
You got
all
all the
Yeah,
lines to deal with.
but to Ron's point, when we're looking at the money allocation, the projects, we have to take it all the way up to Prado.
Yeah.
Landscaping has to be considered all the way up to Prado, because that road will be ours, it's on here,
Oh, that.
the
I-
brown.
Yeah, I don't know what,
Whatever color that
what's the
is.
name of that road, quite frankly, but yes, you're absolutely correct.
Yes.
So it
Absolutely correct.
includes Pistoia but not Prado?
Well,
That is correct,
Okay,
It
so it
changes
includes
color.
Pistoia,
yes,
but not Prado,
correct.
okay?
Prado is the orange color.
Yes, I understand that,
Yeah.
Pistoia is the gray.
Right.
No, the story is the yellow,
No, Pistoia is the
No,
gray.
it's the gray.
On his map,
Pistoia
gray.
is the gray.
This is right.
that's not included.
Pistoia.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
Okay,
you-
yeah,
that's
I'm
why
sorry, I'm
asking the
thinking,
question.
I'm hearing Pistoria, thinking you're talking Casella.
No.
Excuse me. There's nothing in Pistoria right now.
Okay,
Nothing. I just
okay.
put the roads in.
This is a guy thing, isn't it?
But when we look at Prado, the Boulevard one, it changes color right in the middle too.
Well, that's why I'm saying, I think we should, for planning,
Yeah.
take it right up to that cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Go across the bridge, and then it's to the ours. That's the way you ought to put the
So which
landscape.
color?
For
The
Casella.
further,
is-
the westernmost, easternmost.
Which road are you talking about?
Well, if you come down Cypress Grove and then you turn left,
Yeah, before Casella.
So that's-
before
that's-
Casella,
And
that
where
entire
turns
road out to,
That's Prado. That
entering
road.
Prado. Is that the name of the road?
Yeah, it's Prado.
That's Prado, and then you continue down the road till you get to a cul-de-sac. It's in the orange
here.
Right here.
thing.
So are we talking about including this whole?
No.
neighborhood?
No,
Stop it
just
right
up to
there.
that,
Where it changes
that
color
circle.
here.
Just up to the road.
You know, roundabout,
The
Oh,
whatever
just
you
the
wanna call
roundabout,
it.
so not even the blue part of Prado.
There is no,
Yeah,
this
right
is
here.
somebody else.
This is Prado right here. That's Prado Boulevard.
Boulevard, okay.
Yes,
Here's the Pareto community.
yeah, but what I'm saying is.
Pareto
are we-
Boulevard, all the way up to the Pareto roundabout.
So where it turned, so all the way up there.
Yes, eventually is
Even
gonna
though it
be
turns
our
colors.
responsibility.
Yeah.
So from a budgeting perspective, you need to include money
And
that
it should be there
include all
for,
of that.
for the 18-year.
You
We will
didn't
have it by then.
Jason?
Yeah, I believe
It's
so.
the
What
main
we want to
problem.
include is all of these colored areas with the exception of Prado, which is the orange, except for the part going into Prado up to the first roundabout there, correct?
Yeah.
And of course, Pistoia is also excluded.
For all practical purposes, all home construction other than Casella is done. A few straggling homes are still building up.
My Matarita, they're still living here.
Yeah, there's still a couple in there, but I mean, for practical purposes, it's done.
And there's quite a few people living over in this new area.
That is correct.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But that's not included.
No.
No, it shouldn't be.
Now, the plot thickens a bit. Jan had sent me a note about curbs in their,
Just on a small part of Matarita, and it was the builder that failed to fix them.
and the question becomes, since the roads belong to us, right?
Well,
Will, but not yet.
Well, I understand,
Yeah.
but will be conveyed to us,
right.
Unless-
right?
So we
That's
should
what they
accept
wanna do.
All the roads.
So we should not accept them
I
until
was just
we
gonna
hear.
say, so if there are
Thank you.
curb problems, it seems to
Absolutely.
me that we need to be sure
It's our
that
last opportunity.
before the conveyance occurs,
Absolutely.
that those things get repaired.
Correct.
When we had our turnover meeting last November,
Yeah.
Dave Caldwell was there, and there was a lot of complaints from our neighbors about the curbs also.
Yeah.
And he basically said, that's not our issue, that's going to be between the CBD with the turnover.
That's
From
right.
his
Because when
perspective.
they-
From his perspective,
Yeah,
yeah.
well,
Yeah,
what
that's
he-
what they
he-
told me
what he
too,
followed
Nancy.
up by
Yeah,
saying
wow.
is that
Yeah,
it's their job to make sure it's right before they accept turnover.
Yeah.
He's right.
And he was talking about all the
so,
sites.
so the point is, when we go to survey these things, we gotta look at that.
That's why we
as-
walk through.
That's right, and that, as well as the cul-de-sacs, we gotta be looking at the curves.
Curves, yep.
On the roads.
As well as all the plants and everything else.
I have a flavor. When you walk through Matarita too, would you please tell me when so I could walk with you?
Well, our district manager is sitting here now, Mr. Chris Schumacher, absorbing all of this.
He's making notes
And Chris,
furiously.
you normally sit up here to, you know,
Okay.
wherever you wanna be, you're comfortable at time. But you're hearing the sense of feedback that when walkthroughs are scheduled, we're gonna walk every one of these conveyances,
And of course
even
we-
if some might have already been done.
Yeah, we're gonna walk before the turnover happens,
Absolutely.
before it's accepted by
That's
the
right.
district. And the last 30 days, we went over this because it seemed like something fell through the cracks, and I was only concerned with the utility side of it, that had
problems that we see, that we want corrected, predominantly on Cypress Grove Drive. So it has to do with signage, it has to do with landscaping, and
Safety.
the crossover, the safety of that crossover, the lighting at the beginning of Cypress Grove Drive. And Jason, the listing you gave me for landscaping, that covered only Cypress Grove Drive, or did it?
The proposals from
The
Ameriscape?
proposals from Ameriscape of things that needed to be done before we accepted turnover.
That's what I need to clarify with him, is what all they covered in those,
In that. Well, okay.
proposals, exactly. And I do know in the proposals, he did identify the areas, but.
Yes, right, okay, because we need to have, they can't leave us with a lot of crappy landscape. There are dead trees, there's all sorts of stuff up there, and we need to get that.
And Lennar is pushing very hard against the board, saying that the board in the district has not acted responsibly and in good faith by letting this thing go out for months and months and months. You're sitting on the board and don't know the backstory, sounds reasonable. Once you understand that we've never been given what we consider to be our normal opportunity to do due diligence and make sure we approve of it, we do that pretty quickly. They don't repair them as quick, but we'll tell them what needs to be done.
In terms of landscaping, some of the issues that the huge palms they put in the common areas that are died is because they never received the water for 6 months. And pardon?
I'm listening. That's the problem with WCI.
Yeah, but they replaced it with dinky plants, and now they're not being watered, and now they're dying, and I'm not even talking about homeowners' lots, I'm just talking common areas. There's a real problem with the sprinkling system in our community, and it's throughout. Take a look at all this wound, dead grass everywhere.
And we have the same issue on Solano, the cul-de-sac, never been mulched, at least in a year and a half.
Yeah.
Plants are dead. They did come in,
Bad.
Juniper came and took out our dead plants from the nine-year, 2 weeks ago, and said, you got the mulching plants in.
We can be sympathetic, and we are, but
My concern is we're paying for stuff we shouldn't have to pay for.
We're
we
not
haven't
paying
paid for
for
any
it.
yet.
Not yet.
We haven't paid for any yet, but
That's
we
the
need to
point.
make sure.
That's the point.
That what is there is alive and healthy when
Okay.
we take it over. I don't think we get an or in the water that says they gotta be 10-foot tall versus.
And in fact, when Jason originally gave me this list, I said, we really have to have on it just must-haves. We cannot just say, well, we'd like it to look better.
Right.
We can't do that, but we can insist on having it, getting the dead stuff out of there and making it look decent. We can't have, gee, we really like, these.
But their history, WCI's history is, they really pay attention to these roads, because they take all their potential customers on to go to where they're selling, which will be destroyed and graded. So I don't believe it'll be a hard sell. They've done a lot of it over and above what we've asked for,
Okay.
just to satisfy their own beautification. Not the same on streets that are done, but on the main corridors.
Well,
Since it's related to our discussion, I know you've got the CDD board meeting report.
Yes.
Here.
Yeah,
Most of that meeting, in terms of
Yeah.
how we're concerned, was about this conveyance.
Mhm.
You don't mind, I'll cover that very quick.
sure, go ahead.
If you look at each one of these track L things, right, each one of them has a separate conveyance package provided by WCI/Lennar. They wanted the Cypress Grove track L package, right? They wanted that accepted by the board, okay, as well as all the other individual tracks. Tony Pierce said, no, we really need to do it in sequence. Okay, we need to get Cypress Grove done first, and then we'll take the ones after that. Caldwell said, we really don't think you should do that, because the only one we have a problem with is the track L for Cypress Grove itself. The other ones are fine. And we got into a very long discussion as to the fact that we have not been involved with those other conveyance packages. And there was lots of back and forth between April and Bob and the board itself, okay, about how that happened and what should have happened, which led to the conclusion that we, as a committee, need to be involved with every one of the conveyance packages before they're accepted by the Board of Supervisors. Okay, very clear direction was provided in that regard, okay? And if you notice, there was a email that came out a few days later from April asking us for, giving us some information, and that was a result of the direction that the board provided at that CBD meeting.
And
Okay.
part of my take, I heard just a little differently, Ron.
Okay.
Only in the
That's
sense
fine.
that this, what Caldwell was saying is, we understand the concerns on track L, the track L conveyance. But we have 6 that we provided past that. And he wanted to jump the track L with, knowing he has open items there, and go immediately to the other. So he's really trying to do a quick end around.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the way I read it. And I said, no.
Yeah, 'cause we
The
haven't-
only reason you don't have any feedback on the other 6 is we didn't know about it.
Right, correct.
And that's when he was pushing Tony, and Tony asked us what we thought, and both Kyle and I said, no, you gotta have track out first and do it in sequence, because that's where Lennar was pushing. They wanted to, we'll get back to track out when we can, but the other ones you already said, that's BS. Terrible.
Okay. So it clear, the result was that until we, along with the rest of the CDD staff, says each package is complete, nothing's gonna be conveyed.
But, so, everything will be conveyed all at once.
Not necessarily,
Or each
but
package.
certainly in a certain sequence.
As a package.
But being that Cypress Grove itself, that Boulevard section will be number 1.
Yes.
And that's the one that we provided them with lots of comments
Lots of
on,
comments
et
on.
cetera. And they admitted that they are, quote, working it.
Yeah. And
Whatever
Nancy,
that
but
means.
Nancy, from a financial point of view, for the 2018 budget, or the fiscal 2018 budget, we've got to assume that
All of it's
all
All
of it's
of
conveyed.
it, yeah.
Yep.
It's all conveyed. So Jason and Nancy, when you're putting that stuff together, you gotta look at it in long.
And if you can do it in this grouping, okay, because these things may not all occur at the same time, then we would know, for example, if Trekell Cypress Grove is conveyed to us, we know what part of the budget is gonna be billed
So
against.
you want a separate line item for each part of Cypress L?
Well, he's gotta provide,
I think you can just provide the totality for something.
Well, I don't know what we did last year for the total.
Yeah.
But I know that the 7 ponds in track L are in this year's budget book.
Yeah.
So I won't be putting them in again.
yeah,
The 9 new ponds I will,
When you say you won't be putting them again, you will.
because they're there.
Huh?
Even though we didn't pay it, it's there. I'm just accruing money.
Money's there.
The money was there.
Money.
So money's there.
I budgeted it last year at this time for the 17 budget, assuming we were gonna get it.
Yeah.
We haven't got it.
Right.
But the budget is still there.
Okay, but next year you will budget for those
9
7.
new ones. Yeah.
Plus. and
9 new, right.
Okay.
So we may have had, my only point was, we may have put some landscaping money in the 17 budget for what we thought we were gonna get that never got, I don't know.
oh, yeah.
Well,
Well, exactly.
we have a line item for Cypress Grove landscaping, but it never specified whether it included any of these other little.
And that was the
parts.
question we asked Jason to go verify exactly what that comes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and more importantly, that we get the areas correct for next year's budget. Because this budget's done deal, we're never gonna use the money anyway, it's just like extra money.
Well,
sitting
and
there.
it gets part, the other thing, it's just sitting there,
It's just
putting
sitting there.
hopefully into some CDs.
Yeah, it's all in CDs, and they put a lot of money into CDs, so that, in fact, if you look at, our P and L, we're way above, budget, what they expected for interest on our investments.
We didn't expect anything, so.
We didn't expect anything.
Anything we
but
get's a plus.
I think our budget is 4,100, and we're at 9,500 in interest income, so we're doing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Jason, is that fairly clear to you as to what we need, what we're gonna need?
So you want, these, are we still separating all these out for the budget?
I don't think that's necessary.
I don't think so
I
either.
think
We just wanna make sure that we're including all of these
all,
areas.
including them all. I think that's the critical.
Well, the only, just, for this year's budget, we need to know what was included
Yes.
for this year's budget.
What was included for,
That number that you guys provided us for the budget, what did that cover specifically?
okay,
But for
Because
next
that-
year's budget,
Yeah, that'll be our starting point for next year,
Right.
so we'll find out what this covered for this year,
Right.
and we'll add.
okay, yeah, I understand that.
additional sections for next
If
year.
it stops just before Julia, then the only addition should be from Julia to Fredo, plus any additional cul-de-sac.
Cul-de-sacs and the monuments. 'cause you-
Yes.
Although I thought I budgeted for the monuments, I'll have to
You
go
may
back
have.
and look, but I think in the monuments budget, I counted how many new monuments we had, and I just increased it
oh, okay.
for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
figure out what's there and what's
So I
not.
think we're good there. Our monuments look like they're over budget right now, but it's because, the power washing that we had made a separate line item, all of that got put into that. And so
You would
maybe
explain
next year
that.
I'll just move it back.
Right.
You had explained that in the last
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah, so
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think we understand. I
Okay.
understand.
Nancy, anything more?
I don't think so. I hope not.
Okay, any more questions, for Nancy? If
Do
not,
we know when we need to get our budgets? I mean, I'm already working on five.
Yeah, I started last year as soon as I had 6 months worth of information to start budgeting with, and I just got 6 months at the end of March. so-
Chris, have you gotten any, inquiries from Severtran as to when they expect us to start giving budgets prelims?
No, I don't have a budget schedule, but I'm getting one to you in the next couple of days. Yeah, it's still a little preliminary. We're just gonna plan on starting.
I remember we had to have a finalized budget June for us, and went to the board by August or
Yeah,
something.
that's
We're
right.
really coming
Yeah.
up against it.
Yeah.
We'll only have maybe one more meeting. So
Well,
we-
remember, we had a special
We had a special budget meeting.
meeting last week
Yeah.
because of that.
No, I didn't remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready to move on,
Don't go anywhere.
Don't go far. We're ready to move on to the association manager report and Securitas.
Okay, as far as association management, I don't have anything to bring up, but Bob and Ryan are both here from Securitas
Okay.
to go over, dwelling live
Okay.
numbers.
Before they start, from the association, Joe Smith's letter of resignation.
Yes, we saw.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
for anybody
emailed,
that
it was
didn't-
emailed to all of us, okay.
I meant to say that too.
Well, before we get into dwelling live, I just want to once again tell them they keep moving trucks coming to the front entrance every day.
Bingo,
Excellent.
second, yeah. Big trucks.
Bob, are you?
Sorry.
Trucks coming in
Construction.
through the,
We're still
Correct.
getting construction vehicles.
The front
coming
gate?
Yep.
From the front gate, entering and exiting every day.
Actually,
Yeah,
a
I
couple of
watched
them
them
are
come
lined up.
Down Pelican
Trying to-
Reserve, turn
yeah.
up Cypress Grove and drive all the way to the back when they couldn't come in that back gate.
And they're like, large trucks.
Large
yeah,
trucks,
big
yes.
trucks.
Yeah.
The big
Big
construction.
Big
vehicles.
construction
Yeah, they
vehicles.
weren't going to Palazzo.
No, they weren't even going to Plaza, they were turning to go.
Palazzo
Right.
almost makes sense.
Yeah, but still.
They weren't going to Palazzo.
I know why they're doing it, they don't wanna deal with the traffic on 82, but that's not our problem.
Yeah.
I
you
can
know,
see them
yeah.
from my house, I can see them when they make the turn down Cypress Road. I can see them in the morning when
Yeah.
they come in.
Yeah, we'll definitely address that. That's
Yeah,
not bad.
yeah.
Well,
We can't have
I
that.
brought it up almost every time you've been here.
Yeah, well, I got
So,
Ryan
yeah.
down to explain a little bit what Ryan's role is there, so.
Okay.
okay. So Bob, you wanna talk to us, or Ryan, about, going live?
All right, good afternoon. Bob French with Securitas. Ryan Morris is also with me as well. But to address that issue is that Ryan is the other side of me per se, and he's handling the front end, meaning the day-to-day issues like the gate. So, and this was probably brought up in the last meeting. I wasn't here in the last meeting. Was that brought up in the last meeting? Okay. I know it's been the previous meeting. I remember it. So Ryan will do his due diligence to make sure it stops. I mean, we just can't have it. It's too many safety issues now in the community, and you know they leave gravel and mess, and it's just not going to work. We have a back gate for a reason. So I'll allow Ryan to address that when we're done today. Going to Dwelling Live, we pulled some numbers, and you know I showed these numbers to Jason. He was a little bit confused on it. We pulled the last 30 days of our login percentages, and our login percentages was just about 25%. And he goes, well, why did it go down? It dropped. Well, what happens is the participation level was much higher when we rolled it out, and then the participation level drops off. What happens is people go in at once, maybe set their permanent guests up, and they're done. They're like, I'm not dealing with this again. So it's not a good thing, but the level dropped down to 25% for the last 30 days. Now, that could have been the same users going into the system. The 25% are actually using it. We'll have to watch that from month to month to see what the percentages are. If we want to keep keeping that number. We were all kind of shocked, I think, that the initial number was fairly high. and I was quite surprised, to be frank with you, 25% sounds more realistic for a community of this caliber. We want to try to raise that number. So from 25%, we probably want to try to get to 30, 40, keep raising that number up consistently.
Let me make sure I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
How many people have enrolled or registered?
That I don't know. I have to try to get another report for that.
When you say 25%, what does that mean?
What that means, 25% of the properties in Pelican Preserve had actually logged in the last 30 days.
Oh,
Okay, that makes sense. But our numbers we had pulled previous to that were higher. They were close to 40%, because I think it was the initial rollout, like, we're going to go in, we're going to use it. But they're not recurring users, meaning that they're dropped back. I mean, they may have put in their permanent guest list and then they were done with it. You know, they're not putting their daily, which is not a good thing, but it's a start, you know. We want to get that participation level up month over month over month, as high as we can get it.
Have you noticed any increase or decrease in calls to the gate?
You got the call numbers, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ryan's got the call numbers because we're tracking how many calls we're getting into the gatehouse. We got a kind of a different breakdown on them, meaning. Yeah, he gave numbers in that. Yeah. In there. Yeah. So 1175. So 1,175 calls, right?
Correct.
It was 1,175 calls for the month of. That was last month, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So is that higher or lower than expectations?
I think it's a lower number. Now, that was directly related to scheduling guests. Okay, there could have been other phone calls, but we wanted to register how many people are calling in for guests. That number is not a bad number. It sounds like a big number, but when you break it up on a per day basis, it's not overly overwhelming. Though we did find it for sure, and I don't think anyone's surprised, the majority of the calls were in the AM up to the early afternoon hours. As the shifts move on, they decline greatly. So the majority is still during that first shift or first 8 hours, and with some in the second shift. But that's what we're trying to alleviate. We're trying to alleviate some of that phone traffic and that system, improving that system, so we can alleviate that rover to do other things than answer a phone, because that's what they're being bogged down in doing, is answering the phone.
Bob, I think we certainly need to continue tracking that.
Yes.
See whether we're making progress, getting that number down. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see that number drop. Well, the other one's auto-generated. We can pull that, anytime. The other one's a manual process as far as calls. We do anticipate that will decline because of the fact that, obviously we're going on a season now, so we're going to have some decline, I would think.
Can you compare it to last year?
Uh,
If you look at June, can you compare it to June last year to see if there's a decline?
No, because we weren't. First of all, we weren't tracking it necessarily. We were just doing spot audits. We weren't tracking like we are now, and there's nothing automated that's tracking it. It's just it's a manual process. And then the system, of course, we just put in the last 90 days, so we don't have any historical data in terms of that. So once we continue to keep that data, we'll get a better idea where we are. I'm hoping that we can continue. Probably what we need to do is just put another blast out and kind of get people.
I was just gonna say, Bob, what have you done in other communities to get these numbers up? I guess I'm concerned with
Yeah.
the fact that, we don't have as many people as we should have, and I think we maybe lost people because of the problems to start with. Are there other things you've done in other communities to get the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, we could try. What we could do is, I'm not opposed to doing a session, a training session, kind of do something that depending on the participation rates. I did one in a community just recently, and I was quite surprised at the participation level because it wasn't primarily for that; it was for another function, and I coattailed behind it, and I was able to get the participation about 40 residents of a community that's about 980. So that's pretty good. I mean, I've had these before, and I have 15 people show up. And of course, I get the 15 going and to get them more confident in using it, but that's going to take us a long while at 15 at a number. But I'm not opposed to doing that. If we want to schedule something and see how effective it is and see if we can get at least our year-round residents up on the participation rates, constant communication through email blasts and through the newsletter, that type of thing also help. It's a combination of different things. Yes, sir.
Bob, first I'd like to compliment the Securitas crew because for the first time since
Oh, you're not calling in, right? Oh, yeah.
But it'll get through to my brain sooner or later, and I'll start doing it. It's hard to train them, but at least they are doing that part of it's work.
Well, we have change in our staff. Keith has joined us. If anyone hasn't met Keith, Keith has kind of taken over for Jennifer, has been out and filling medical leave. And Keith's kind of taken charge of things, a little bit over aggressive at times, maybe a little detailed, but he's really has a really good passion to keep moving this thing forward. So I think Keith's been a big difference for us. Yes.
Do you have to set up in your profile that you want those notifications? Because I was at a discussion this morning where some people were getting them and some weren't, and that was, I thought, was they didn't set theirs up to receive email or text messages.
Excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up because I've seen many emails circulate in reference to I didn't get notified, or I did and I didn't. So what makes a difference when I do and I don't? Yes, number one, you do have to set it up initially to either get a text or an email or both. Then once you do that, I'm hearing that we're getting periodically, we're getting the alert and we're not. Well, the primary reason for that and what we believe is, look, going back to the officers, when they print a pass, it's going to send you the alert. When we click them in, it's going to send an alert. But what we have to remember is when they come back through is we have to scan the pass, because if we don't scan the pass, you're not going to get the alert. So I think what's happening is they're checking the pass, but they're not alerting the pass. They're not scanning the pass. So I said, we got to get the passes scanned.
Well, maybe
And
summertime would be a good time to do a class when you do have a smaller population and see how it goes with them and then. go from there.
I'm open to that. I mean, I think at least we can determine our participation levels. If we get it in the summer and we get, 50, 60, 70 people, that's a pretty good number. And then we can repeat the process, and that could be helpful,
My daughter and her family here 2 weeks, had a 2-week fast. Your guys scanned it every time. I don't look at it.
But, of course, you're not in the system, so you didn't get an alert because you're not registered. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Had he been in the system and asked for.
The alert, I'm in the system, but I never asked for the alert.
Yes.
He would have
Yes.
gotten one every time.
But
You
I
did
will-
it
I'm
at
gonna ask for
7:30 in the
alert.
morning when I go to Winn-Dixie to get their donut.
Right.
I always get them, so I.
So, yeah, because we had a couple emails circulating about that, and I think that was the primary reason. There could be a problem. This has happened with the network, meaning your network, if you have Verizon or AT&T or some of them have had issues with the network where it didn't go through. But that's kind of should be the exception to the rule, not the norm. But it was a general statement we received. It wasn't.
It was a question that came up for the president's meeting. Yeah.
So what I will tell you, we're going to go back now and make sure that they understand, meaning the officers understand that it's not just checking the pass is all great, but why it's important they scan it. It's important they scan it so they can notify the resident that they've entered the community again. I don't think they quite understood that. So we need to go back and make sure they understand the reason for it.
There may be a small meeting method to get the message out if we run to the HOA association when they have their meetings. The board meeting, not the board, but I don't know if it's worth the time and effort, but that might, you have a neighborhood there and you're going,
Yeah, maybe it's something each president could. Yeah.
Yeah, I would
not a bad
strongly
point.
suggest trying to tack it on to something, because I think
Good
if you
point.
try to set something up alone, my fear is,
Yeah,
It's not
it's
gonna
too
be a
big
high
and too
priority.
broad.
HOA
Yeah.
might work.
An HOA
Yeah.
annual meeting, that's a good point.
But they,
Yeah, for a social
But
function.
that means we're not likely to get anybody until, right, they're all.
They're all
They're-
uniform.
they're
Why,
done for this year.
why would
They're
you
done for
wait,
this year.
why would you wait for 1 year? Why can't you spread them out over the course of a year?
Well, because the HOA meetings. because
Everybody
they're
does.
annual meetings.
They're every month.
No,
Not the
annual
board
meeting.
meetings are, we're talking.
The
annual.
big
Annual.
HOA, the
The
master
residents.
HOA.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
not the residents, no, the individual HOAs, but they're annual meetings. You're talking about the monthly meetings, it's just the board and maybe a few people who
When you have
attend.
to vote for the new
It's when
board
the
members.
annual meetings, when you have to get a quorum, and
Just
those.
something to think about for next year.
Okay.
But
But-
you just turned over, Jan, so your annual meetings probably will be a year from now, right?
No, we have a meeting next week and all residents are invited to attend.
Well, that was
Well,
the
but
other,
that's
that's a
different.
perfect occasion.
That's a board meeting though, right?
It's a board meeting, but residents can come.
Right.
But they won't.
They always can.
There's
but
more of an
we're
I'll
talking
be
about the-
there.
We're talking about the
Yeah,
annual
yeah,
meeting where
yeah.
you're gonna, like,
Yeah.
board members
So it'll be a year from now,
Talk about
a year from March something, whatever that was.
The budget meeting draws a lot of people.
Well, always.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, do we think it's worthwhile to making the stab at a special meeting?
I don't know if Carol Brocky's gonna have another meeting this year.
No, she's not.
Okay, because I was gonna say, she kinda indicated that the last meeting, they might pull another one in just because they couldn't cover all the stuff.
But you know, the HOA meetings sound like the best idea because they're small, where people can ask questions, they can actually see how it's working. I just think that's a really.
I just wish it was sooner, but yes,
Me
I
too.
agree.
So let's, Jason and Bob and, let's plan on, as we get into the season for annual HOA meeting, see if we can set things up for the HOAs.
How many HOAs we have to do?
And the participation rate keeps
Yeah.
dropping, didn't it?
Oh, 25, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But, I mean, that could, and the other thing could maybe is, maybe in the president's meeting, bring it up to each, board president, see if they can push it in their own communities. See if we can get some are gonna be more active than others, but see if we can get each community up as an individual community. That would help.
And we can do that, but the problem is the only meeting we have where a lot of people show up is we're back against the
The annual meeting, yeah. Okay.
Different subject, which could be a good thing. I've noticed a lot of residents wait to see what cars or trucks are going through the guard entrance versus going through the residence entrance or the trap gate.
Trap gate.
A lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're lined up 6 and 7 deep to go through the quicker gate. Is the issue of keeping the trap gate still open? I know, it's,
Could be
But, well, I didn't hear,
It's the issue of keeping the track gates still open.
keeping, is the issue,
We
are you
still want
asking
the
to
track
eliminate the track gate?
Yes.
yeah, I do. I do, but it's not up to me, clearly. I don't see the advantage of having it. I don't know what the crime rate is, but I'm pretty sure it's almost 0. I don't think the chance of someone tailgating a resident is high, especially if we've got patrol cars there and, the guards are picking up on a lot of the details.
Did you live here before we had the track gate?
I've never lived in a community where they had a trap gate, so,
But
We had some serious tailgates.
Jan,
really.
the reason the gates going out would be more often is because people trying to tailgate and follow somebody else.
That's right.
So if they were doing it going out, they're doing it this time.
All right, so it's closed.
Well, at least for now.
I just wanted to raise it, that's all. I just know
I
there's a lot.
applaud you for raising it, because a lot of residents would continue to advocate to continue to look at that and get rid of it. So I applaud you, thank you. Keep it,
We'll keep it on a shelf and not
Keep
let
it
it get too
somewhere.
much dust.
yeah.
Bob, I'd be interested in Orion and Securitas's, take on track gate.
Well, funny you say that because I just had a community that added one. We just had a Naples community. It's a resident-only gate now. It used to be a construction gate. It's been turned over. And the residents really were having a problem in the back gate with folks tailgating. So we now put a trap gate in their back gate. And it's been successful. We've had them bumping off the gates because they're pushing through or trying to push through. And we have it on video, and of course we take action against that. But they are so far they're for it. So they're not they seem to be growing incrementally, but not a whole lot. So if they obviously they have a purpose. If they didn't have a purpose, they wouldn't be adding them. It is a problem. Tailgating's always been a problem. Not to say you still can't tailgate on a trap, but it's certainly a little harder and it's a little more visible to a camera or to a patrol officer or an officer, the fact they did that. So
I think you made great strides in the performance and the function. It's a lot quicker.
I think it's, yeah.
We first come in, you'd almost park.
And with the other gate operating, it works well too. At
Yeah.
that point,
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah, the biggest problem we have with it is the big trucks that go through. They can't go underneath the porta share, and they have to go in that lane. It kind of messes up our residents a bit. So we're trying to get them through the gate, move aside, and then we'll process them through so we can get our residents
Hopefully
through.
send them around to the construction
What big
Well,
trucks?
no,
What big
no, I'm
trucks?
talking about like the Lowe's and the movie, our local service people, not, I mean, yeah, now, yeah, we could always move all our guys back there,
Just out
but,
of curiosity, this, Naples community, that trap gate, do they have, you have a guard there too?
no, we had one.
Automated.
No, it's automated now. The guard used to be back there.
Does, you have a problem with it locking up?
So far, no.
Used to have?
No, so far, so good. Knock on wood. Yeah, we have a patrol officer that checks it every 20 minutes, and then we also have a camera on it from the front gate, so if we see a problem.
Same software we've got that causes our gate to lock up from time to time?
It's going to be the same methodology, yeah, maybe designed a little bit differently, but it's going to be the same concept. Yours doesn't lock up too often, though, does it?
It used to lock up all the time, because people would hitch up.
Yeah.
Before the outside gate came up.
That's,
it was locked up.
yeah, this particular community has, not only does it have a trap, but it has gates on top of it. So it has big iron gates and two in a trap. So it's even more complicated. Yeah, Colonial does have it as well. And the one that has the
It was
most,
just a quick question. I don't think we,
Okay, well, it's something that's always kind of sitting on the agenda.
yeah.
if you want to see a real trap gate,
Visited a lot of times.
you want to see a real trap gate, go to Quail West on the back gate. They have a real one. I mean, a big one. That you go through and all kinds of gates close down on you, put you in a box, and then it lets you through. It's very interesting. So, very scary one.
Any more questions of Bob? We gotta move along here.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jason, you have nothing more?
I do not.
Move on to the capital reserve study. Ron?
Okay, yeah, thanks. Couple of things, we made some progress. I did meet with Jack Reynolds, who's an interesting gentleman. We spent almost 2 hours going over the report that he provided to us back in 2012.
Is he a resident?
Yes.
He's a resident. And he did the reserve study back in 2012, and if anybody would like a copy of it, I'd be more than willing to give it to you. He's very analytical. If you look at his report, it's chart after graph after chart after graph, and very little narrative, which is why it took me 2 hours to go through all that with him. Okay. In addition to that, I talked to Ed Tinkle, one of the supervisors. In his community, they did a reserve study in 2015, and he provided me with a copy of what they had done. Okay, so I've got something to compare it to. Completely different kind of package. It's all narrative there. It's like 50 pages long, and it's all narrative. It's overkill on the other side of that thing. The methodology isn't significantly different, okay, but the approach of how they present it to their customers is very much different. One of the things that I covered with Jack Reynolds is I asked him, how did he come up with the list of assets that required reserves in the tax bill? And he said that he walked the community with a member from CDD back in 2012. And the two of them walked the community and came up with the list.
Is that you, Scott?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
Then why are you here? Back in 2015, when there was a reserve
Just
study.
in the audience.
2012, and when a reserve study was done for Pelican Reserve by Jack Reynolds. I don't know if I read any
I
about it.
was not involved in
That was before you.
Okay. In any case, that's how he came up with their list. Okay? So they actually, walked the community, which goes back to a little discussion we had at the last meeting, where the gentleman here who has the most knowledge of our assets is sitting next to you, Phil. Okay? And we talked about, John, working with whomever, to come up with this list of assets. And at that time, I said, I really would like to be involved with that. And then the issue of the sunshine law came up, and so I presented that issue to Mr. Pierce, the lawyer, and he has not responded to me. So I don't have an answer from him.
I was thinking about that. If two people from PPAC are involved with something that's not necessarily on the agenda or have anything
Well,
to do with finances at the time, You
That's
keep
the
shaking
way,
your
that,
head.
no,
It could
because
be a
that's
way
how I,
that it's around the sunshine.
yeah, that's how I present it.
Or we
to Tony.
present a report
Right.
each time.
I don't see the, personally, I don't see the violation, because it's very compartmentalized. It's to do one specific thing, come up with a list, and that's it. Yeah, and the list isn't gonna, you know, that's it.
So the point is, we're waiting to hear from Tony.
Well, that's my question to you guys, because that may take forever.
Nancy, yes?
Oh, can I interject here?
Sure.
When you're looking at the assets, what you wanna do is look at, and then Steve should be able to give you this.
Steve.
Or Tony, or, Danny from Tetra Tech. The bonds were distributed from the very beginning to do our infrastructure. And so, for every asset we have, there was bond fund expenditure, and there should have been a date and so forth for all those assets when they, now, when they got transferred from WCI to the CBD, that might be an open question, but we're really interested in the age of it from day one, not necessarily when it got transferred to the CBD.
Nancy?
Just as a way of approaching it, if you could follow, get that list and follow, when distributions were made and what they were made for. Like we just, appropriated funds to do the final list, there would be a transaction for that, in that, bond account.
Nancy, this is Ron. Stephen Bloom is where I started this whole process. I contacted him first, and he said he and his staff have been trying to come up with a list of assets for months. And he gave me a printout that was about 6 pages long, and it made no sense to me whatsoever. And he said they're having a very difficult time trying to come up with a list of assets. And I can only relate to you what he's told me. So I don't know whether going back to Steve is a viable approach or not, but they've been working on it for months and haven't been able to come up with this list.
I know, that's what Steve told me. What I would suggest is that Danny from Tetra Tech has that, all the charts that go back to day one, and so do Tony, about when those first distributions were made from those bond accounts, and the line item, as to what they were made for, and dates, and when they got paid, and so forth.
Because we've changed management companies, Severn Trent and all, Brian Land's outfit and everything, that doesn't surprise me. But Danny and Tetra Tech have been a constant in the process.
So have you talked to them?
No, I have not thought.
Okay, well, that's a place to go then.
Yeah, and Danny's got a pretty good system of keeping track of money.
Yeah, I guess one of the questions I would ask apropos of that is, when we have these Cypress Grove assets transferred to us, they were not subject to a bond financing.
But they haven't been conveyed yet.
They haven't been conveyed, I understand. Will we get a list of those assets? I guess we will, as part of the
Part of
transfer
the
package.
conveyance.
Yeah.
I would assume that'd be a
But
very
what,
basic.
but what you won't know when you get those assets is, a date, when they were built or added, because when they do the reserve studies, they go by the aging process. So, if you're talking about, streets or light poles or whatever, you won't know its age, you'll just know a list of when it was conveyed, unless that is something that, is asked for, at the time, of the turnover.
Yeah, it seems to me that WCI could provide those numbers, could they not?
They should be able to.
I would think so, or alternatively, you could estimate.
I was just gonna say, for the newer communities, we can sit here and come up with an estimate that's within a year or two of the actual, and for something like a road or a
Right.
pole that's got a 30 or 35-year life, the fact you're in year 3 versus year 4, I don't think that big a deal in terms of the study.
Yeah.
Because the yearly amount per pole is not gonna change, okay? So-
And I think Jack, had started that process of making a list of what he thought the assets were. And that was done a couple of years ago. So it might be some of that just adding on to what Jack did as the little communities come in.
Who has the list now?
Tetra Tech should have everything that was provided by Bob.
That's the
Is it
implication.
worthwhile to do a
W's.
walkthrough
But
of the community
I
again?
mean, that's certainly a way of doing it.
But you won't know when it was built.
Yeah.
You can guess.
So that gives you a couple of paths to go down.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything more on the capital reserves thing? Okay, the story continues.
Right along with the P-PAC charter, at last week's CDD meeting,
Yeah.
Tony actually approached me to say, apologizing for not giving us the comments on the charter, and once again promised that they would be here shortly. Well, it's been a week, I'm still waiting for it.
What are the legal ramifications of our charter? What, do we really need a legal review of our charter?
My sense would be that, yeah, I was gonna say, that Tony thinks so, and further, our charter's gonna have to be approved by the board, and they're gonna ask for Tony to review it. John, don't you think? You think the board will just go, oh, yeah, it looks good to
Well, then
us?
Tony would review it.
They'll give it to him.
It'll get there. It'll get there.
It'll get there. It'll get there. Moving right along. We're on to the final lift, which has been completed. Or not completed, but at least done. Chris, do you wanna come up? But we have an issue of more work that needs to be done. And Chris, maybe you could talk to us about
Oh,
that.
that's it.
Sure. I got involved with the project right when they were doing the contract. Tetra Tech put the bid specs together. Project went to pavement management to come in and do the final lift and the curbing. It was delayed slightly because there was a difference in the actual curbing cost when they went out and checked it again, a little more damage. So they went out and did the work and let me know, and I sent some information to your HOA about it, informing them of the schedule, and the curbing be done the first week, paving would start the second. And what's come up in the past couple days was 2 complaints, and I spoke with David Bell about, and one was the area when they put in the new curbing, 2 or 3 feet of the sod was destroyed, and that was part of it. And then they also asked about the asphalt because there was some scraps or pieces left, and they were concerned about people pulling it on their cars and going up in their driveways and tracking that asphalt through. So I sent a note to Steve Agapi and Joe at Pavement Management and said, hey, what about the restoration? And Stephen asked Mr. Bell, well, can you get your contractor to send us an estimate to replace the sod? And I asked Mr. Bell, I didn't know he was working for Tetra Tech now. But and I called Joe again this morning and I said, hey, I sent you an email Wednesday when this came up. And Greg called me from the HOA and what's going on? He goes, oh, I haven't had a chance to get out there. I said, well, they're tracking that asphalt up in their driveways and it's becoming a real concern, and so is the sod. And he said, I'll go out there this afternoon. My only question was, when you have a contractor that does work and they finish, they generally don't walk away. There it is. And I wasn't really privy if Tetra Tech had inspection services. I would have.
We are there.
Okay. With that, but and basically to make that happen. So hopefully Joe will get out there this afternoon, but it makes me think in future projects, you know, here's what you do, there's a line item or restoration, or, you know, if the work's done this day, same day you start and you fix whatever you broke. It's no different than if they went and put a dumpster somewhere. Well, yeah, and one thing we do with construction projects here and with this lake bank is, you know, we videotape it high definition. And that way, you know, did the contractor cause it? Because sometimes you get a crack in the driveway, everybody's driveway's cracked. Okay? But that's a good safeguard for yourself to do it. And with the Lakes project, where it's a little difficult to do some videotaping, we did it by drone. So you could just run it up and down the street.
drone?
Well, our construction inspector does.
We gotta get
Do we have money in the budget for a drone?
Hey, we didn't
Next
have-
year.
We didn't have to pay for the traffic study.
But not for the drone
But-
operator.
I'll do
But,
it for free.
But it's a good way, and if you have to cover some area, or you wanna go down and look at sod along the lake bank, and maybe you don't wanna walk that slope, and it.
Most of the contractors that we have been using, we've really not had any pushback on them repairing what they did wrong.
Yeah, and I-
Because they're all looking for more contractors.
Sure, and I'm not that surprised when I called them Wednesday, because they really just finished that work Tuesday. And I was like, well, it's Wednesday, you know, they have a little time to come back out. And, I believe they did throw some sand down on the brick part to keep the asphalt from blowing over and sticking to that. So, I'll be waiting to hear from Joe, but,
You
you know.
next call somebody to put the dirt in the street.
And you get that, but to me, it's like the project we're working on now. I told them the construction's part's easy, the soft side, working with the residents. You know, if you tell a contractor you need to sod that, you're probably gonna end up with Bahia next to your floor tan along the curb. So, but that's where it's at now, and hopefully Joe got out there this afternoon.
So hopefully this particular situation is resolved.
And I've worked with PMI on 2 different occasions, and they've been very professional and responsive. So I would assume they're gonna be doing that in this case too.
Any questions, Chris? Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Thanks for coming.
I have one more question for you, Chris.
Sure.
I think you're the right person. Are we still having water pressure issues from the Gateway side?
No, that was really confined to around Thanksgiving with a couple pumps that went down. And I actually have a system, you can go in the back and look at the monitor, and minute by minute it shows me the pressure and volumes.
Because the stories some of us are getting from Ameriscapes is that it's a water pressure issue.
Well, you know, I
That originates.
had that at Hampton the other day, and I went up and they said, what's wrong with your system? I said, there's nothing wrong with this system. And they said, well, there's first 4 houses come on, it's fine. The 5th, look at it. And I said, well, why don't you try cleaning the filter in front of your irrigation solenoid valve? And if they don't clean those filters, obviously they clog up and the pressure drops. But in the morning, 6 to 7, I should say 4 to 6 a.m., we're pushing out about 6,800 gallons a minute.
I don't think many of us are up at that ungodly hour.
Well, that's just the high watering hour, and sometimes I tell people, if
Oh,
you're having a
got it.
pressure issue, I go, just, you know, change your clock to a little different time. But that also, and if I can take a minute and lead into the Gateway Water Use Permit for the irrigation system is coming up. It needs to be modified, application submitted by November. And what they do is they look at acreage that you're irrigating, and they look at an application rate and how much water they're gonna let you put down. And right now, with the meters we have that tell us when people are using water in that system there, you know, I'm looking at a non-watering day and I'm running 3,000 gallons a minute out the system
On a non-watering day.
on a non-watering day. And right now, we are getting severe demands from Prado and Pistoria in that way, because they decided to master meter that community. And with all the new vegetation, they're watering every day, you know, for multiple hours. And one day I went by there in the guard shack and the water's running down the street, and I said, what's going on with that? And the guard said, oh, I've told them 5 different times in the last week the line's busted, they still haven't fixed it. Then they came out to fix it and look at it. And I called them and I said, you know, of course, at 28 cents a thousand, 30 cents, it doesn't seem to impact them, but I go, you know, you're wasting water, and also you're pulling your own pressure off your system that you need back there. But one thing that this may get to, and really when you look at, we put a brand new 150 horsepower pump back there, and we're gonna put another one in a few months to upgrade the system just because it's old. But you get to a point where you're at the end line, and how much water can you push out? And one guy said, well, up the system to 100 pounds. And I said, yeah, and start blowing lines out of the ground. But there have been CDDs that instead of 4 days a week watering, you're 2 and 2 with the addresses, they do a 7-day a week, and they do it by HOA, because the HOA seem to be better at enforcing water restrictions than the CDD. And then you know in your community what you're doing, but it also spreads that demand out 7 days instead of 4. There's also another CDD, the dunes, that when it's on non-watering days and times, they just go back and turn the pressure down to 20 pounds on the system and the heads won't pop up. So this permit modification with the Water Management District may be where the rubber hits the road, where they say, your community's using too much water and you need to do something about it. And it wouldn't surprise me. I had a HOA recently that's master metered, and a couple of people, can we sit down and talk to you? I said, what's that? Our water bill's going crazy. You know, these people are I said, well, if it's included as a flat fee in your monthly dues with the HOA, I'd probably be out there leaving the hose on and, you know, water my lawn whatever I wanted to. And they asked me, you know, what you can do about it. And I said, well, you can do what the district does. You have a master meter out there, crank the valve down when it's non-watering. Of course, if you have irrigation people doing repairs during the day, that can be a problem. But
One of the issues that a lot of us encountered last year, many of us, some of us, being first-timers, first-year residents here, was when the snowbirds left.
Right.
The water, when you turned on any faucet, had a foul egg smell. And I've done a little bit of research on it, and I actually called you guys, and you said the lines need to be flushed. And where I came from in Northern Virginia, the fire department used to come out once a quarter and drain the fire hydrants, and that would get rid of all the junk stuff that was just sitting there.
sure, and they're exercising them at the same
So
time.
what-
That's a drill that they
What does
did.
Gateway do?
Well, the line flushing is really in an area that we come in Prado, and they say, we want you to take over the utility, you know, the water and sewer lines. A normal utility would say, yeah, once you build everything out on it, fine, we'll take it. Of course, you can't get a CO without water, and heavy pressure from WCI, and the tradition has been take the utility over. And I said, well, thank you, I appreciate that. Now I got 24 houses on that line, and I'm gonna flush 5 times the volume of water they use to keep the water fresh in the line. Typically, from an engineering standpoint, you want that turnover in that line every 3 days, there's new water coming in. So when you have a limited amount of houses on a loop like that, that's why we would go out and flush. It's just
There's
to-
about 180 on one that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But one of the recommendations was everyone should empty their hot water heater and refill it. In a time when water is at a shortage, that seems like a colossal waste to me.
Well, water heater's 30 gallons, so, you know,
Flushing a fire hydrant's a lot cheaper.
yeah. Well, it's, and there's a couple different issues with that, and if you don't mind me taking a moment, part of that hot water thing and the smelly water issue, I've kind of tracked down because WCI actually came into a few houses that complained about that odor issue, and I told the people, I said, water in our lines are fine. We don't have this smell, we don't have this issue. Where is it smelling in your house? And they said, the rear bathroom. And I'm like,
Every faucet I turn on.
what do you mean the rear bathroom? Well, it's only back here. Huh? And so I go around, they go, it's not in the wash tub, it's not in the kitchen. I go back, and for about 3 seconds, you know, you get that whiff, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. And they just said, you know, if this was our water, it would be throughout the house, and it would also, I would have hundreds of people calling me. I know in a couple instances, WCI sent plumbers out to people's houses and hypochlorinated the lines. Basically supercharged them and then flushed it, and then the people called and said, we don't have any problem anymore. As I look more into it, it appears there's a bacteria that grows in hot water tanks and in lines. They call it BART, but it reduces iron, it reduces sulfur, it has a slime bacteria in it that protects those other bacteria. And I asked the guys at WCI, you build a house, you fill the water heater, you fill the lines, you walk away for 3 or 4 months, the house sells, the house closes, 5 months later somebody moves in. What do you think the water's gonna smell like? It's been sitting in those traps, sitting in that hot water heater for 5 months. And I've actually gone in, and it's almost taboo for a water utility to go inside someone's house. I mean, if our water's fine at the line, not our problem. But it got my curiosity up enough that I went in there and started pulling some of these bacteria tests. And it's funny because I pull them in one part of the house where it doesn't smell, and they're like, it's not there. Over in this, where they talk about it, that bacteria is present. Now, whether it's in the lines there, it's a little bit of a mystery, but mostly where we find the odor complaints is snowbirds that are gone for 4, 5, 6 months, and they come back and say the water smells, and I'm like, well, if you were water sitting in that trap in the toilet or in a hot water heater and the chlorine dissipates every month, it loses strength, I go,
I don't wanna belabor the subject, but the issue wasn't the snowbirds leaving and coming back,
Right.
the issue is when the snowbirds leave. Gateway told us,
Mhm.
is because it's not enough water is being processed, so
Well, it's-
whoever stays gets the pungent odor.
well, it's, that shouldn't be so much, but that's why we flush our lines in the section, but it's, more so when they're developing and they only have a few houses on the
Do
line.
you do any kind of regular maintenance? I guess that was the question I was
Yeah.
thinking too.
Oh, yeah, and we're out there right now flushing those lines in Prado on a regular basis, cause there's not enough houses that consume it. Also, you look at a fourplex, they sell one.
Right.
There's 3 other units, how much water's going into that fourplex and moving through?
So could we call you if we have a problem?
Yeah, I can try and help, and,
That's it.
We need
I
to-
know,
we
I
need
know.
to
Yeah, and I'm
get
sorry.
moving on here.
Sorry.
Okay. I think the GSCDD board meeting reports, Ron and Bob have gave us, written reports. Anybody have any questions on them? Okay, Cypress Grove conveyance issues, I think we pounded that one to death.
If I may,
Yeah.
and I'm talking of everything, the 6 post-track L's.
Yeah.
I have, in the process of engaging Morris Raleigh to do the inspections, I've got to call into Caldwell to see if they did it. I don't do anything official yet, but what I think I'm hearing is, well, you don't have to inspect them, because we paid somebody to inspect them and make all the repairs. And I told them flat out, I'm glad you did that, but we're gonna inspect them. So, because I know Sewer Viewer was out there working and some other people, but we literally have no confidence in how robust what they do is. So, but I'm gonna start that, the last time, the track L, WCI volunteer paid. We didn't ask them, they just said they'd do it. I don't know if we're gonna get that same courtesy this time, but if we don't, we have the money for it. It's 9 ponds. So I'm starting that process already, even though we haven't been officially detailed. I want to make sure that it is.
Those are the 9 beyond the 7 that you're.
That's right.
taking. Ponds work group.
Okay, I've got a couple things today. There's, in the packages that you have in front of you are 3 spending proposals. And these are all related to drainage, downspout drainage. We have started on the Valentina neighborhood, and in fact, that was done. So this had previously been brought to PPAC, we approved $73,000, but then because of some financial things with paying the people and a whole bunch of other things I need to get involved with, that April brought up, we decided to break it into 3 segments. The first segment is completed, so I now have in front of you a Copeland Southern Enterprises bid to spend $10,175 on Lake. It looks like this.
Yeah, I know, but we got 2.
Yeah, they're different.
I got 2.
They're
the
different,
same
but they're
number.
same, no, they're different numbers too.
Yeah, well, I picked up.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we accept the Copeland bid for $10,175 to do drainage on Pond 25.
Is there a second to that motion? No second? Second.
Can I read it?
Oh, it's just downspout drainage.
Okay. Second.
This is Pond 25.
This is Pond 25. Pond 25 is in the Avila community.
The one they're working on now?
No, that's Pond 27.
Okay.
Pond 25 is where we installed GeoWeb 2 years ago.
On the other side.
On the other golf course side. There's 2 ponds there, 25
And
and
this
29.
this one is in the amount of how much, Bob?
This one is $10,175.
We've got a
I'll second.
motion and, well,
Second.
Jan second, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, the next
Carried
motion
7-0.
is another bid from Copeland Enterprises, and this is for Pond 29. This is Avila, again, on the other side where we did a couple of years ago with the GeoWeb, to do the very same thing. This one is $15,775. So I'll make a motion that we accept it.
Second.
Second, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Okay.
That carries.
Okay, now there's a third one. This one is from Extreme Divers. This is,
Is that in our package?
yes, should be somewhere here. That's where I pulled it out, $21,475.
And that's for who?
This is for Avila,
Oh, here we go.
Pond 27. This is the one where we're doing the bank restoration.
Okay.
So we reasoned that we'd never get it done cheaper than while we got all the equipment and everything right there on the bond bank to do it.
Why is
So we
it
get
so
all
much more
set up.
expensive?
More homes. These are more homes.
You can't get a group discount?
These are group discounts, but I'll go into that in just a minute.
Okay.
Now, I want everybody to understand, this is what we refer to as rip and replace. When WCI developed these homes, all of them in Avila, they put in a less robust drainage system. And it's collapsing, it's degrading, roots are getting in it. That's why we have all our problems. What we're installing is a 6-inch double wall piping with clean out availability so we can, clean these things out. When we do a neighborhood, we're asking them to step up to accepting responsibility to do an annual blowout, clean out inspection. And the neighborhoods that are saying they're gonna do that, that's how we can pick who we're doing. So now, I'll make a motion that this would be accepted for the $21,475 Extreme Golf Course, Extreme Divers.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, non-seconded. Question, Bob.
Yes.
Are we ensuring that the stuff that's gonna be conveyed to us has more robust?
Yes, I'll cover that. We're getting there. I want to get my monetary motions out.
Okay.
So,
Any further discussion on that one? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
That carries.
So those, and I'm gonna walk them into next week's board meeting to get the approval, because we wanna get this stuff rolling. Okay, now, in speaking of downspout drainage, we've taken two things that are unique now, working with Chris Schumacher in the district. We got a consent to have a blanket order with Ferguson Enterprises, who's given us the fittings, the pipes, and all that kind of stuff. We have a blank check, if you will, not to exceed, is it $25,000? So as I dip into this for $15,000, as soon as we get the approval, then we go back and replenish that 25. But this way, we're not waiting all the time for the paperwork system to catch up with our spending initiative. Keep in mind that we've allocated $985,000 to do all this. So we got the funds right now, and we're just trying to do it in the best way. We currently have two different people bidding and working, Copeland and Extreme. Our past history with Extreme is they're very, very good, but they are pricey. So we have two more people bidding at this time, Ameriscape and Morris Riley. So in the new homes the new communities that we're looking for, like Portofino and Monticello and Toscano, we're getting multiple bids. Right now, we're just accepting the bids we can get. But we're gonna get multiple bids, and then whoever the best performer is, they'll continue to get our bids. But this is the way we have decided to approach this, trying to make sure we're spending our money efficiently. But yet, if we have everything going to one guy, we will never get the project done. So, that's the approach. Some homes, like the Tiberio Valentina, our very first project, it was easier to bid it because it was just installed. There was nothing there before. And if you go to installation versus pull out the old stuff and then reinstall, it gets to be a little bit more complicated. So, the second part about going with Ferguson and doing it this way is the contractor doesn't have to provide the parts, so we avoid their markup. When they buy something, they mark it up themselves, so we're saving money there. And because we're buying it through the district, we're saving the sales tax. So we're getting down to the nickels and dimes and trying to save as much as we can, spend them on the crew. So, to recap, now we have 4 different contractors we're evaluating. We call them pilots. We'll sort that through, the workers can sort that through, and we will go with whoever it is that's going to be doing it in the future.
But not necessarily the lowest bidder.
combination of, yeah, we
Performance
look
and-
for low competency and the work that they do.
Right.
If a guy's really doing really, really good work, we might have to pay a little premium.
That's
We have done
okay.
that in the past. Yes.
That's a good thing.
Yes, absolutely, we do that. We have 9 new ponds, as I mentioned earlier, that are 6 new advances that are coming. So I've already engaged, sent a note to Community Environmental Services to start, to give us a bid to do the bathymetrics and the depths and the silt and all the pro formas that we do in advance of putting in the aeration. All 9 of the new ponds that we're going to take have a form of aeration right now that was provided by WCI. WCI chose to put in the minimums, and they disregarded what our specs were for the numbers, so now we're just gonna basically be upgrading it. It should be at a minimal cost, because half of the cost was electric, and we've got electric everywhere. So this is, it's all getting following the same sequence. We'll be putting out a bid very shortly for trap gates to keep the fish in these 9 new ponds. So we're surveying them, you know, how many we need, and then we'll engage those. I'm starting a memo for aeration phase 3. And this is gonna be for these 9 new ponds, because aeration phase 2 is everything in Old Pelican that wasn't done the first time, plus the new 7. And that bid was sent to us, the package was sent to Chris and I this morning, I guess.
Right. There's a copy up there for you if you like.
Oh, okay. And as soon as we get the blessings of Tony and Tetra Tech, and then that goes out for bid. Last time it was $475,000. Optimistic it's going to be considerably less than that this time, but you know, we'll see. Rather than doing a formal open bid process, Chris and I have talked about it, and we're going to go to everybody that bid the first time or the last time, and then anybody else that they would care to add either. They, the district, or their district. But this way, it's a known quantity, people are bidding on the same thing. It should be a much speedier process than the last time. The other facet that's due, that's different between phase 1 and phase 2, is the district did all the floor checks, mainly Scott going out and making sure that we had power, we had easements, all that kind of stuff. This time, we paid Morris Riley to do it, and they will supervise construction for us. So that whole aeration should be a much smoother process this time. And we'll still do all the community meetings. For those of you that weren't here, that people wanted to string stuff, they didn't like the noise, they didn't like this and like that. So we'll have some of that again as we go forward. But we're trying to keep everything going in a sequence. We have a fishing group now. We have formal meetings on Mondays. We have met with them. We're seeking their recommendations for where they would like to have 2 fishing areas on the Cypress Grove communities. So once they get us that back, we'll get it blessed by WCI, then we'll take it to the presidents, make sure nobody has any objections. It won't be in anybody's backyard, all the normal safeguards. Then we'll designate the zones, kill the littorals in those zones, and we'll move forward. We are going to put sterile carbon in all of these ponds. And we're starting that process now with Community Environmental. We buy those carbon from the state of Florida, and we have, specifically at the fishing group's request, we're getting pricing on putting game fish, Florida game fish. So, in as much as that's public CBD money, when I get that, I'll bring it back to the group and see if we approve of it. It's a reasonable amount of money, but $1,000 or $2,000 for a gazillion fish, okay.
This is so people can catch the fish?
Yes, catch and release. But if it comes back and it's gonna be, the cost of an orca, we won't do that. So we're trying to work with them to be responsive to their needs. Oh, in the package here, our friends from WCI apparently sent a note to South Florida Water Management District relative to some of the 6 conveyances that we haven't been made aware of. This one has to do with Batterita 4, but I've seen other ones. And South Florida gave them the blessing. So I don't know if they're trying to go in and run, and I don't know why I even think that way. But, just be aware
This.
that they've gone around us to try and get South Florida to bless the advanced for maintenance. And that's not worth the paper it's written on for what we need, as far as the service.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
What do you do, you've addressed the roof drains, what do you do about pool drains? Do you
No.
have any-
That's really a self-regulating policy, because if anybody is like me, one time I put $1,000 worth of water in that pond.
Right.
I take care of that.
Okay. And
I don't think it'll be recurring, Chris. I'm not trying to be funny, but.
Oh, no, and also on the ponds on the turnover, they got into that discussion that the ponds, you know, they can go to the district and turn it over because it meets the permit criteria, may not meet your criteria.
Correct.
But also I think the bathymetric data that you're pulling, you could look at what the permit required on depths and that.
We're no,
And compare it.
we could probably hold it to that. We haven't done it. We haven't looked at it. Our ponds are pretty shallow.
Because a lot of times, especially when pool people come in, you know, they destroy the back of it, dump all their dirt in the pond and, you know, fill it up and cause all sorts of
We've had
problems.
a little bit of that, but
Not too much.
Not much.
Bob,
So,
is this a done deal?
Oh, yeah, that part. And all that means is, South Florida is the governing regulatory body for water management. And they have said, in essence, it's just a letter, they didn't go out and check. They said, you know, because you have certified to us, to South Florida, by way of these engineering documents, that you built it the way you said you were gonna build it, we approve what you said you were gonna build. They don't go out and filter. One of the problems we had before. Because these kind of documents got us into the situation where pipes that WCI certified went to the flowway didn't.
Weren't there.
You know, we corked up and flooded our community. So you gotta take these kind of things with a grain of salt. If
Really?
a bureaucrat sitting somewhere and he says, yeah, here's what we're telling you gotta do, you're telling me you did it, you certified, okay, then you're good. And that works until you have a problem. And then South Florida comes back in. Case in point, Gulf Harbor. They built their ponds, South Florida approved it, WCI walked away from it. 7 years later, they got problems. The residents called for help. South Florida came in and said, hey, these are all screwed up. You need to spend $5.4 million to fix it.
The
And it was
residents?
$4,500 per door. Because it had been conveyed to them, now it's theirs, WCI was gone. WCI said, well, it's good when we left it. Clearly, it wasn't.
So that's what we are trying to avoid.
Those are the kind of
Getting
things, that's
stuck.
right.
And the developer will tell you, hey, the district signed off on it.
Yep.
That's good enough for us, it should be good enough for you.
And that's why we are as vigilant as we are with this kind of stuff. And the last, what was the last one? I think I've given you copies of just about everything. I had one other thing that I can't. Oh, I'm keeping a running track of all of the ponds that require drainage, so I'll have this information for anybody who needs to see it. What we estimated it was gonna take to fix, the kind of repair, whether it was rip and repair, replace, or whatever. And then how much we have committed out of our $985,000 to date.
Well, wait another month, they'll all be dry, we won't have to worry about it.
It's better for us to do this when it's wet.
Really?
It's a lot easier to dig.
Okay.
And put this stuff in.
They're
Bank
low.
replenishment, the
They're
opposite.
so low right now.
It's better dry, but for the gutter drainage, it's better wet. So, that's where we.
May I ask you just a quick question, which I should have asked under the minutes? There was a quote on GIS, was it $125,000?
Oh, no,
That's what I thought.
I must have missed that. Our contract with them, I think was $25,000.
That's what I thought you told me.
Yeah, 25,000
So
total.
that's a correction of the minutes.
Then we need to fix that.
Yeah.
We're probably pretty close to the max right now, and I'll put money in again for next year's budget, because there's been a lot of.
Would you take a look at that?
Yes.
It's the second last paragraph, it says 125, and I forgot to mention it, but
No, it's 25,000.
I asked Diane to check with you as to whether that was the right number.
I can tell you right now, it's 25,000.
Okay. That needs correction.
That's all I know. We've asked, RWA, the engineering firm, to get us the as-bills for these 9 new ponds that we're trying to get ahead of the curve, so we're not the problem, it's what's been held up.
John, I know you have to go. Any report on capital assets for approved?
I think we're fine, everything's been signed, the addendum has been completed, great.
Okay. It has completed and approved, right, Ron, at the last meeting.
So if Tony gives the okay, I can work with Ron on putting together an asset list.
Yeah.
You know, walking around isn't a bad way to do it.
Just don't talk to each other while you walk.
Take notes.
Walk on opposite sides.
Talk about golf then, yeah. Okay, on the safety and security work group, a couple of items to report. First, our traffic control agreement. I was under apparently a mistaken impression that we had to have a sign survey done before we could implement that program. The sign survey has been done, or they've been out and looked at the signs. We haven't gotten a report back as to what the situation is. However, I was informed this morning that that cops are already in here and have been giving out some warnings. I don't know if they're actually giving out tickets, but they're giving out warnings.
No, they're giving
In
out
Pelican
warnings.
Reserve. Huh?
They're giving out warnings.
Warnings. And so I spoke today with Ray Viner, who is our police contact with the Fort Myers Police Department. And he said to me, well, as far as we're concerned, the city council approved the agreement, so we're implementing. And so the left hand doesn't quite know what the right hand's doing, and I said, Ray, that's great, go ahead and implement it. So my plan is to have the safety and security work group meet with Ray, and his lieutenant, and we were already setting it up for next Wednesday, so that, because what I feel it's incumbent upon us to get some kind of communication out to the community
Yes.
about this program.
Yes.
So, but prior to doing that, I wanna have us meet with the police so that we understand what the program is, how they're gonna implement it, so we have a little bit more information rather than just saying we've got this program. So we are gonna have a meeting with the Fort Myers Police Department, get an idea of how the thing is gonna be implemented, but they're already doing it.
Oh, yeah,
So
they're out there.
this is a good thing, and when the word gets around, and we will.
See if you can get them to give us a periodic report, how many either warnings or tickets they've given out.
We'll do that.
Because I had done that many months ago,
Yeah.
and basically was told we had to pay for it. But,
The periodic
yeah,
report?
yeah.
Okay.
So see if they'll do it, at least initially.
Initially do that. Anyway, so that appears to be moving forward. What's gonna happen with this sign survey, I don't know, but I'm not gonna push that issue at this point. As long as they're willing to enforce without having that done, I'm a happy camper, and I think we all will be. Secondly, the second issue for safety and security work group is the traffic study. All the data collection has been done, and we are now waiting for Johnson Engineering to come up with their recommendations based on what they came up with. I suspect it may be another month, because the story they gave us was, we're really eyeballs and that kind of stuff. But hopefully within a month, we will have a report from Johnson Engineering, based on which, and we will share that obviously with PPAC. And based on that, the safety and security work group may come up with some recommendations for various changes in the traffic regulations within the community. We don't know what it'll bring up, but we're gonna be looking at that. The third item I wanted to report on was something I think I mentioned at the last meeting, and this has to do with the path through the preserve, part of which is owned by Sienna community. And right now, Jason informed us this morning that they're almost there with an agreement which will allow the community, WCI, to get rights of way or an easement so that they can take care of the entire path. So hopefully we will get that done. I've been pushing the Baltimore to try and get that done, and apparently they're on the path to do it. That's it for safety and security work group. Any questions? Okay, we're on to the Gateway meeting attendance. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. We'll assign you only one or two meetings.
John is.
Well, I am scheduled for May, I can still do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Are you, you're scheduled for May 4th?
Okay, I'll still do that.
You're still okay?
Yep.
Okay,
think I'm on the schedule for April 20th.
That is correct, you are.
Okay.
You all right on that?
Phil's got May 18th.
I've got May 18th. Can we, let's do a couple of, Nancy? Oh. Hello.
Zen music.
We're getting music, huh?
Put another nickel in it, Nance.
Okay. All right. The June meetings, which I assume are, what would they be, on the eighth?
The
The
first
eighth?
Thursday's the first.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
It's the first of June and then the 15th.
15th. First and 15th of June. Do we have any volunteers who can do those?
I'm not gonna be here for, I can do the 15th.
Okay. It's just a
I'm
pretty-
assuming that my eyes are okay.
Yep,
I can do June 1st.
June 1st. Okay, June 1st is Nancy.
Aren't we allowed to volunteer someone who's not here?
Oh,
Of course you can.
And June 15th is Ron, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's good enough at this point. Okay. We'll move on. Committee member requests, any committee member
okay,
requests?
if the pond's financial item's gonna come up in any meeting of the board, I generally like to come to those, but I don't wanna speak for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm just coming to something.
Okay.
Okay. One other comment that somebody asked me about, I forgot to talk about the bonds. Somebody asked me, do we know the new communities are correct, bring up the story as far as this drainage? Went out there, next week or this week, with Stephen gave, we walked the homes, and I can attest to the overwatering. Because when I walk between the homes over there, I got water up to my ankles, and I can't get a drop in my house. But, they are using the proper materials to double wall. Everything is good for what we wanted, but they've chosen not to put in the 3 bubble up drains that we want. Front of the house, middle of the house, back of the house. Stephen made a written request to Rhonda Brewer to have a meeting so we can discuss that. Took 3 days later that she came back and said, Lennar is not interested in negotiating, discussing, changing their plan. So, Stephen forwarded that to me as my request, and now I have calls into Rhonda because I want to talk about it with her. Because what we have proposed is we want them to build it the way we want it, and we're willing to pay for it. These 3 things are gonna be maybe $100 a month, if that. Yeah, it's nothing, but it means an awful lot if you're walking between your house and you sink in the mud.
Yeah.
So, that's a TBD, but somebody asked me, do we know what they're doing out there? And the first answer was, no, we really didn't, but we have going out and look, and at least we know they are putting in the proper materials. So I can't believe this should be an issue. WCI's been extremely cooperative. Hope that doesn't change with Joe Smith. But if I gotta go over Rhonda's schedule, I'll go where I gotta go.
One clarification question.
Yeah.
The Resident Alliance meeting, a gentleman got up and spoke about, why don't we have a master lawn mowing contract for that Uber discount that you could get for all these communities? And then the different HOAs could hire, them for different things like pruning or whatever. Now, is this part of our purview, or is it Resident Alliance?
We
or-
only have the common.
We only have the common areas, and that would have to be.
That'd be a good question. Why don't we have a master contract? That
The
would be
reason
cool.
is, I'll tell you the short answer, is some of these neighborhoods are very thin. I think almost everybody started with Ameriscape, and then they thought they could get better service by going with XYZ or RFG or EK. And that's the difference. It is the individual personalities of the neighborhood HOA and what they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a great question. We thought the
Well,
same thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing to bring up at the president's council meeting, because that's where.
Same thing with
President's
management
council-
companies that you talked about today. It's the same thing.
That meeting is the
That's another
morning,
question I have.
that meeting was this morning. It is the morning of our,
But-
when our meeting are in the afternoon, 9 o'clock in the morning,
But residents can come?
residents are allowed. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am so.
But there are a number of services like that that you would think you might get a benefit for economy scale.
Yeah.
I thought it was an excellent question, and I didn't feel his question was answered. But then again, I didn't know under whose purview that came under.
It's not ours, but it could be under the president's council to at least to see whether there's any interest. That would be the president's
Yeah,
council.
what you have to do is you have to get the individual HOAs to sign up to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a hill that I invite you to try and get.
No, I'm all about economy of effort.
Yep.
Okay.
And just a clarification, if you want to do that, probably a good way would be to have your president forward that when there's the request for agenda items. Because even though the meeting is open, the discussion is really focused around the items that the presidents have forwarded for the agenda. So
Okay.
that would be a good strategy to use.
Yeah, Jason puts out a request for agenda items a week or so before the meeting, and your president would get that request.
Well, we're brand new, so we're not even having our first meeting till next week.
Okay, whoever your president or your resident, you probably have some kind of resident representative.
We have a board now.
Representative, well, then that person should add that to the agenda.
Okay.
Any other board things, any audience comments? The audience has shrugged. We thank, Chris, we thank you for attending. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Trudy, it's always good to have you here, have somebody monitor.
Someone has to be the thorn in my side.
Monitoring what we do. I would, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Third.
Meeting is adjourned.
Fourth?
Bye, Nancy. Nancy?